Fit to Love, episode 103, Emotional Regulation.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flizanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Thoughtful Thursdays. Today's show, Emotional Regulation. We have with us Maria Newson. Maria has a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Southern California and a master's degree in clinical psychology from Antioch University. She is also a registered yoga teacher, trained in Hatha, Iyengar, and therapeutic Yapana restorative yoga. Maria strongly believes in the mind-body connection and that our thoughts greatly influence our mood, both positively and negatively. Maria employs proven clinical tools, including CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, interventions, and mind-body techniques that enable clients to find greater joy and meaning in their life and relationships. Her specialties include anxiety and depression disorders, emotional regulation, life transitions, spiritual awakening, parenting and blended family issues, and couples counseling. Additionally, she enjoys working with adolescents and helping parents understand their teens' disruptive and angry acting out behaviors and provides tools for healthier family dynamics. She offers an eclectic brand of therapy, which combines a variety of tools best suited to you or your family's needs and integrates calming and the mindfulness techniques, which she uses extensively in her work as both a yoga instructor and a student of yoga. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Yes, I'm excited about our topics that we're going to talk about, especially this one today, emotional regulation. I have to be honest, and while that seems so common in terms of like just the words, I would say emotional regulation. I've never heard it used before in what people offer or even as a practice. So before we get into emotional regulation, though, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a therapist and the work that you do?
Sure. I actually started my career in publishing and advertising. I worked in radio and television, and then my last advertising spin was in print advertising, which there's not a whole lot. I mean, there's still print out there, but it's really moved more to the internet and digital and social media. So print, my friends and I that used to work in publishing, we're kind of the dinosaurs, but you learn a lot. I learned quite a bit in publishing. So I was a sales director and a sales manager. And so I would manage a lot of teams. And so I had to do coaching, motivational interviewing, just a lot of things to get my team, the individuals on my team, motivated to hit the large goals that we were given. But I found that if any individual on my team was having problems at home or with a boyfriend or personal issues, they obviously couldn't do their job. So I spent a lot of time almost as a therapist and a coach and a mom and everything else. And so people think it's a funny transition going from publishing and advertising sales into this, but I think for me it was a pretty smooth transition. So I moved from the advertising world into this world of therapy and again coaching and motivating, and in addition to becoming a yoga teacher, which I did about 10 years ago. So I was able to combine a lot of things, and that kind of brings me to my work as a therapist now.
Excellent. Okay. Well, it says under your specialties that one of the things that your specialty is emotional regulation. So let's start off by defining it. What is emotional regulation?
Well, most of us have the ability when we are upset, hurt, frustrated, angry, to sort of rein in any acting out or any sort of emotionally driven kinds of behaviors. Some people are not. Either sometimes it's a genetic predisposition, sometimes it's the way that we're raised, sometimes it's substance abuse. There's a whole bunch of things that go into not being able to regulate yourself. But it really causes a lot of upset and a lot of problems in people's lives when they cannot emotionally regulate. So they will come to my office either because in their relationship they're having an issue, or at work, or with their children. They just really understand that their behavior, what they take in, a comment or something from someone, really kind of spins them out. And so it's the process of kind of helping them understand that they are emotionally dysregulated, that they do have what we call distress intolerance, and tools and ways to overcome that.
All right, let's talk about distress intolerance. How would someone be considered, or what would be the criteria that would make someone distress intolerant?
Well, for example, let's just take a couple where, the just give it a husband and a wife, and he says, I don't think I want to go to that party. I think I'd rather stay home and just sort of hang out. I'm not, I don't really want to, I just don't feel like doing that today. She might, instead of saying, well, I'd like to do that, or how about if we maybe just go for a little while, somehow she takes in that there's something about her. You don't want to go to the party because of me. You're embarrassed of me. You're ashamed of me. You think I'm going to do something wrong. And it just sort of starts there and just builds and builds and builds to the point that they're not even arguing about the party anymore. They're arguing about, her insecurities, her feelings about how he makes her feel when he doesn't want to go to that party. So couples will come into my office, and I just used the example of a couple there, but couples will come into my office sometimes, and I'll find that while, yes, there are some couple issues going on, I really need to work with that person who's having the problem with the emotional regulation or the distress tolerance. And often that comes from what we call childhood wounding, very core, deep issues that they're not even aware of. So that's where the work begins.
Could we also consider distress intolerance or the need for emotional regulation from someone that's got a lot of trauma?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there again is the, some childhood wounding, some core issues that happen. And it could be anything from physical or abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, to just feeling like the unwanted child, or just being the less favored, or whatever that is, whatever that person internalizes, and then makes it very difficult for them. They're highly sensitive, and they take everything as if someone is, taking a dig at them or not appreciating them. And it becomes, I say, it's like a tsunami of feelings that comes rushing forward that really has very little to do with the discussion or argument at the moment with their partner, but really with the history of feelings, the history of anxiety.
Now, I'm very familiar with all kinds of therapies and doing different therapies and recommending different therapies. And so I know that a lot of times people aren't coming in knowing what the root cause of their issue is. So they're not aware of that, but they're coming in for a more of a surface level, what I'm going to call a surface level problem. And then you get to dig through all the rest of this to find those childhood wounds. So what are some of the common sort of surface conversations when it comes to both individuals? Let's do individuals first, then couples that are coming in that allow you to then, or that, get them into therapy in the first place. And then through the process, you get to uncover that they need emotional regulation and that they maybe have PTSD and trauma and triggers. And so what do they come in for?
Well, they'll often come in, we just can't communicate. We just don't understand one another. When I try to tell her something, she gets so angry, slams doors, leaves the house. He just shuts down. It's sort of all of that comes under that umbrella. We don't have intimacy anymore. We don't have sex anymore. We're not even affectionate with one another. Our kids are hearing us argue. So it's those kinds of symptoms that they're coming in with. And then individually, it's the same, but it's things like, I can't seem to keep friends, or, everybody tells me that I'm so uptight, or I'm so overly sensitive, or, so it's things like that I hear that we begin to talk and we begin to sort of peel back the layers and find that there is some sort of a perceived trauma or real trauma that's gone on in their lives.
Are there steps of therapy or therapeutic tools within emotional regulation? So whether it be mind-body connection stuff or conscious mind, like you said, CBT, can you talk a little bit about like what, if I came in for emotional regulation, what we would be doing?
Right. Well, like I said, you wouldn't come in obviously you wouldn't be able to name emotional regulation, but you'd come in for what I just explained, and just not feeling right and feeling like the world is against you, and just, all of those sorts of feelings and emotions. I want to just take talk about a little side note here, which is there's a therapist, her name is Marcia Linehan, and she in the 70s began to develop CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but she took it a step further and developed something called dialectical behavior therapy. And that is what is used, DBT, what is used most often and very effectively for emotional dysregulation. She developed it initially. She was actually one of 6 children, and she was sent to a mental institution at the time and had been given the diagnosis of schizophrenia. And so was on a lot of medications and had a lot of treatment, but yet continued to cut. She would slash herself. She was suicidal, many suicide attempts, and they just could not get a handle on what was going on with her. So after she was released from treatment, she began to do some of her own work and then just sort of put together this framework of dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and then diagnosed herself as not with schizophrenia, but rather borderline personality disorder. And borderline personality disorder is sort of the classic place where someone is incredibly dysregulated, has incredible distress intolerance. And it comes from, again, back to trauma. But with someone who's a borderline personality, they cannot hold the container. They cannot hold themselves and all the feelings that are coming at them. So DBT works in the following way, and it can be applied again to couples and people who are not necessarily borderline personality, but certainly display some of this emotional dysregulation we were talking about. So what we do is cognitive behavioral therapy, which would include a DBT group where they do homework and assignments, and they sort of learn a whole new way of interacting with people that they haven't up to this point been able to do because of their dysregulation. We do exposure therapy where we expose them to the thoughts and the feelings, and we let them sit with them and what's going on and where are you going with this, and let's do some breathing and let's calm ourselves and let's really look at these thoughts. How true are they? And then we do our cognitive therapy and we recognize and sort of reassess patterns of thoughts and replace them with more positive thoughts and more clear thinking thoughts, we more clarity. We also, one of the things that Marsha Linehan talked about was validation, that people with borderline personality, they have, while we as therapists are pushing them for change and pushing them to really look at the world differently so they are not so annihilated by their feelings, dialectical behavior pushes for the change, but at the same time validates their feelings, which was something that wasn't being done and is done in cognitive behavioral therapy, but even more so in DBT. And then finally, just that the dialectical part of dialectical behavior therapy is just letting them understand that all things are interconnected, that change is constant, that one day you're going to feel great and the next day you might not feel so good, but that does not mean you have to be dragged down by those negative feelings. So it's helping people understand the seeming contradictions between their feelings and being okay with that, because that's what life is about. It's never all beautiful and never, all dark and difficult. It can be in that gray middle if you learn how to access tools and access the teachings of dialectical behavior therapy, for example, to kind of get you to a calmer place.
Are you familiar with Michael Singer's book, Untethered Soul?
Yes.
Is there anywhere in either DBT or CBT, and I know because of yoga and that you do and the mindfulness work, is there a place in there with emotional regulation about the difference between like the thinker and the thoughts, that you aren't your thoughts, that you aren't your feelings, those kinds of things?
Right. Yeah. In fact, take it another step. There's automatic negative thoughts. We have the National Institute of Mental Health tells us that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Most of those are negative. And so, along the way, someone coined sort of the ants, automatic negative thoughts, and how to stamp out the ants. And so people with anxiety, with emotional dysregulation, all of those things, it's really allowing them to understand how influential their thoughts are to their feelings and to their behavior. And with just a moment of reframe, they can come in and look at something that is so dark and so difficult and it's so terrible. And by reframing their thoughts, understand that, oh, I feel a little lighter when I think about it that way. Oh, I can perhaps believe that it's not going to be as catastrophic as I thought it was. So there is a direct connection with that.
Now, you said that there are 60,000 thoughts approximately that we have a day. Were you looking at conscious thoughts or subconscious?
Conscious. I mean, we have 60,000. Most of them they're not at the forefront, but they are, if you take a minute and just sort of really consciously think about where your thoughts are going, they go all over the place. And so some of those with some people, and on certain days, all of us, they can be quite negative. And if we watch them and we observe them and we catch ourselves, we can reframe them and, kind of get back to a more homeostatic place. We can't always do that. And particularly those who are dysregulated, they have a really tough time doing that.
I'm curious as to if some of the people, so you were mentioning the person who started DBT and how she was diagnosed as schizophrenic and then decided that she was a borderline personality disorder. How much of the work either that you've witnessed or read about or experienced or done yourself with people has actually changed their quote unquote diagnosis? One of your gurus is Dr. Wayne Dyer. I love him as well, and about the power of your thoughts. And I know that one of the things he teaches and that I kind of support is that lack of not wanting to label, and because people will live by their label, they'll wear it like a label. So so have you been able to see, or have you known of anyone that has transformed that label through this work and transforming how they think and getting emotionally regulated, and then therefore their chemistry changes and some of their wounds are healed?
As a marriage and family therapist, as an MFT, my work is really to ameliorate relationship issues, as opposed to a psychologist who does testing, and there's a test called the MMPI that can really tag and test personality disorders. So that's not really what I do. When someone comes in, though, and I can see clearly that they are what we call access to, access to when we diagnose people is where personalities go, personality disorders. So borderline, avoidant, dependent, narcissistic, also substance abuse, things like that go on access to. So if I spot that and it's severe, then I have to refer them out to what we call a higher level of care. So either a psychologist or an MD or psychiatrist for medication. Because what we do find is sometimes with borderline personality disorders can be regulated with medication for anxiety and depression and other things. That is not what I do. But if I see someone who has borderline traits, let's say, or I can see something going on, but they're not full-blown borderline personality disorder, I can work with them. And yes, with them understanding what is going on, where this is coming from, that they have to take responsibility for their emotional health and not look outside of themselves to someone else to make them feel better, then the process of healing begins and change.
Great. Okay, so I would love to hear what you have to share with us about anyone who's listening that thinks they could use some emotional regulation, or maybe they're identifying themselves with having trauma or getting triggered easily and having those conversations that you gave as examples earlier on. But before we do that, I do need to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Having a hard time losing weight even when you eat well and exercise? You may have weight loss resistance. The Metabolic Makeover audio program will uncover the 7 factors of weight loss resistance and guide you towards identifying what to do about it. Discover what common foods and toxins hinder fat from being released from the body and how you can naturally increase your metabolism. Let Dr. Alan Peters, Jeannie Peters, and I walk you through the steps of weight loss resistance so you can overcome it once and for all. Visit the products page on fittolove.tv to download it now. Do you want to look and feel years younger? Learn more about your hormone health and how to get properly tested. Sign up for the Healthy Hormone Kit at nourishingwellness.com. It features the essential tests you need to tell your doctor to order for you to learn more about your current levels. Plus, you'll receive lots of healthy eating and lifestyle tips to improve your hormone health naturally. Again, that's www.nourishingwellness.com. Okay, Maria, so I'm listening to this and I'm identifying with what you're saying and I'm seeing that within myself, and I want to know how I can start helping that before maybe I'm not ready for therapy yet, or maybe I am very ready for therapy, but I want to start right now. What can I do?
Well, that's a tough one, because oftentimes people who are very emotionally dysregulated don't quite see that the issue is with them. They're very outer directed. We call it the external locus of control. But if their life has become difficult enough, frustrating enough people are telling them, hey, you know what, you've really got to look at this for your own good. I would suggest, talk to a therapist. Psychologytoday.com is a wonderful resource. You can go there and you can put your zip code, I believe you can put a specialty that you want, and all sorts of people come up. And like my profile, JJ, that you read, I mean, it's you get a pretty good feel for what I do. And that's the same with Psychology of the Day. So get with a good therapist that you're comfortable with, that can help you, work through these things. And it may be just a simple matter of a learned behavior. Maybe your parents didn't model terrific skills in regulating themselves. And so that's what you learned. But it's affecting your life in a very profound way now. So you learn skills. The other thing is there's some great books out there. One book I really like, it's called the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Skills Workbook. And then the tag is sort of practical DBT exercises for learning mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, emotion regulation, and distress tolerance. And it's by Matthew McKay, Jeffrey Wood, and Jeffrey Brantley. And it's terrific. It goes chapter by chapter, kind of leads you through sort of the early stages all the way through. So you've learned all sorts of tools and interventions that include mindfulness and breathing and distraction techniques and just all sorts of ways to sort of really kind of get a handle on what you're feeling. And I think it also helps, you feel you're not alone, that this is not something only you do, that there are a lot of people out there that struggle with this.
I often used to tell people that there was something called I would call it emotional management. And so when I saw emotional regulation, I thought, oh, that's probably the clinical term. I've been saying emotional management to kind of, maybe it might be this, I'm meaning the same thing.
Yeah.
So I love that you've given this workbook, because I know there are some people out there who will hear this and feel very compelled to pick up the phone and either search you out if they're local and come and see you, or try to find a therapist. But then at the same time, there are people who are just on a good day, they'll identify themselves in what you're saying, but think, I don't know that I'm ready. I have shame about it, or whether it be financial, or, they're just not ready. So thank you for that workbook. And if people are interested in getting in touch with you, and how can they find you?
Sure. They can call my office number. It's on my website, but the number is 310-546-6500, extension 58. They can also go to my website, www.bepresent2, BEPRESENT2.com. Or they can also look me up on Psychology Today and get to my website that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Maria. And I loved having this conversation. And I know a lot of people are going to be very helped by being able to either identify themselves or others and go, wow, maybe this would be very beneficial for them. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
What does your self-care routine have to do with dating and relationships? Everything. How you treat yourself is the blueprint for how you show others how to treat you. I call this your body blueprint. Ready to change your body blueprint and manifest better quality relationships and physical results? During the month of February, I am giving away free copies of the second edition of Fit to Love, How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life, when you subscribe to this podcast. Visit fittolove.tv/ebook to download your copy today. That's FIT2LOVE.tv/ebook. Let's transform your body and your relationships. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If this show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.